Fast fact: phishing is the most common form of cybercrime, with an estimated 3.4 billion spam emails sent every day. I'm Drew Thomas, and you're listening to Bank Chats. So on today's episode, we are going to once again revisit the topic of cybersecurity scams and related topics to cybersecurity. And we're going to try to focus in on this episode on things like cybersecurity scams specifically. And there are a lot of different scams out there. Phishing scams, ransomware scams, tech support scams, social engineering scams. And we're going to touch on all of those in today's episode. If you have not had a chance to listen to our previous cybersecurity episode, you can definitely go back and check that out. It is Cybersecurity 101. It has a lot of good information. We touched on a lot of these topics in general, but there are going to be some things that you can go back and listen to. But in that episode, you would also be able to get acquainted with our guests who have returned for us today. We have Kevin Slonka with us once again and Michael Zambotti. They're both from St. Francis University. And Mike just kind of gave me an eyebrow. Did I get that right?
You absolutely.
Okay.
You said both of our names correctly.
I was looking over there, and then I got the eyebrow from Mike, and I'm like, maybe I did something.
Well, sometimes his eyebrow just twitches.
It's just a twitch. I need a banana.
Yeah. So thank you guys very much for coming back. I mean, this is a really, really deep topic, and I mean, it's an ocean of information. And so I think that's why we really tried in the first episode to just touch on the high points, give some people some identifying sort of waypoint markers for how to think about cybersecurity and what it means to them. But today we want to really delve deep into some of the specific scams that are out there when it comes to cybersecurity, because I think they affect both consumers and businesses on a daily basis. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned so many words at the beginning. I hope we didn't scare off people with all those words that they don't mean. Don't worry, we're going to talk about all of them.
Absolutely, we are. So before we get to that, Kevin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, give some people some background about who you are, just in case they haven't listened to the first episode.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to the first episode, go back and listen to it. But if this is your first one, I'm Kevin Slonka. I teach computer science and cybersecurity at St. Francis University. And I've also worked in industry for various defense contractors since around 1999.
All right, Mike.
And I'm Mike Zambotti. I also teach cybersecurity at St. Francis, and I also work with industry. I work with companies to develop a more secure cybersecurity posture.
Excellent. So you guys aren't qualified at all to talk about this.
I don't know why you have us here.
So let's talk a little bit about scams. And I think that this is, just to sort of lead into the topic, scams. There's a lot of terminology around scams, and a lot of it is really just designed. Most of these scams are designed to have you do most of the work in a lot of ways. It's designed to elicit information or solicit information from you to give the hacker access to your information without them having to do all the heavy lifting on their own. And it's just different ways of going about that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think the word that you're using is right. Scams instead of hacks. Because, when most people hear the word hack or hacker, you imagine, the guy in the hoodie in his mom's basement hacking into things and doing super, super technical stuff. But most of the things we're going to talk about today, if not all of them, are not that at all. Most of the things that people fall victim to that we're going to cover are just us messing up and doing something that we shouldn't have done, that we should have known better. And we'll talk more about, how can we know better. But yeah, it's very easy, non-technical stuff from the hacker's point of view.
Mm-hmm. And scams have been around. They didn't just start with the internet and with technology. Scams have been around probably since the beginning of time.
Sure.
Like all things, technology tends to accelerate whatever the thing is, both for good and bad. But we've seen scams a long time. Now we see it in the digital age. And we see, like Andrew mentioned, getting you to do the heavy lifting, getting you to do something that's not in your own best interests with, thinking that you are.
Mm-hmm. So essentially digital snake oil, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So one of the most common scam types that I think everybody has heard at least mention are phishing scams, and that's PHISHING, because I think
It's
Mike,
not going down to the river?
Yeah, I think Mike mentioned at one point that some of this stuff is spelled really weird, and different acronyms are thrown into things like that. But so phishing scam. So explain the phishing scam. What is a phishing scam?
Hopefully everybody has an email account and has gotten emails before. And sometimes we get an email that is maybe advertisements or what we called spam. Okay, get those emails and it's, this is not a product I want or need or anything. Harmless, but it's advertising and it's annoying. Phishing would be an email that's directing you to do something, whether it's click on a link, whether it's open an attachment, whether it's do some sort of activity, maybe contact the attacker or the person that sent the phishing email in another method, maybe a cell phone call, maybe a text message. So the phishing email is going to call you to action, and that action is probably going to be something detrimental to yourself. Like I said, clicking on a link, you might think, well, click on a link, what could hurt? What could it hurt? Maybe you click on a link and it goes to a landing page, and it looks really, really like Amazon's landing page. Attackers will do that. They'll copy the original, and then they'll set up their own. So that whenever you type in the credentials are not going to Amazon, they're going to the attacker. In class, I do a demonstration. It's about 3 minutes long as a proof of concept to set up an Instagram landing page, which you can send as a phishing attack. And I show split screen where whenever you type in the password, it pops up on my screen.
Wow.
So it's just that easy for an attacker to steal your passwords.
3 minutes.
3 minutes,
That's wow.
Yeah. I think that as we talk about these things, I think that it's important to note that the reason we're talking about these things is to help educate. It's not to scare you into never using the internet again or to stop using your social media or anything else. It's the idea that, much like fire, fire is a fantastic servant. It is a terrible master, right? So, if you're more in the know, if you understand what to look for, you can use your computer, you can use social media, you can use the internet much, much more safely than if you're just ignorant of some of these things. So this isn't an episode that's designed to scare you into never using your smartphone again. It's an episode that's designed to help you identify some of these things and hopefully avoid them.
Just, based on what Mike said, I have a story from one of the companies I used to work at. It was a managed service provider. So they acted as the IT department for other smaller companies that may not have their own IT department. And, we would always try to train everybody to detect phishing emails and show them what to look for and how to determine if something's real or not. But this one person at a company, it was a small law firm in Johnstown. So, right around here, it happens to everybody. This one lady got an email and it looked like it was from this person from a financial organization that she worked with. So it was like dealing with some legal mortgage papers because that was the type of law that they were doing. And, it looked real. It had this person's signature, the real signature of this person's email. It looked like it came from the real person. There were no misspellings. Everything was perfect. And there was a link in it to access the documents on their secure document site. Which, for anybody who's ever worked with financial institutions like that's a normal thing. They're not going to email you secure documents. They're going to host them somewhere that is secure and make you go get them. So everything looked real. But this lady correctly thought to herself, I wasn't working with this person today. Why did I get this email from her today? We don't have any business together today. So she sent the email to us at the IT company, say, hey, can you just check this out? I just don't know. I didn't click anything yet, but just to be sure before I click. So I looked at it and my first instinct was, okay, this is real. But then I started digging a little deeper, and because I know how to safely click on these links, I clicked on the link and I saw where it took me. And then I started digging around a bit, and it was exactly what Mike had just described. This link would have taken this person to a website that looked like the Microsoft Office 365 login page, looked exactly like it. If this lady would have entered her credentials and logged in, thinking she was getting her secure documents, her credentials would have actually been emailed to a Russian email address.
Oh, wow.
So, that's the example that I always give people. If you think you're not a target, somebody from Russia was trying to attack some small law firm in Podunk, Johnstown. Like, it happens to everybody. You are a target.
You know, to piggyback on that, there was a defense contractor in Johnstown that was actually attacked by a Russian hacking outfit. And there ended up being a federal lawsuit, and you can see the name of the Johnstown contractor in there. So, you know, often people will say, you know, we're small, we're in a small town, we're not a target, you are a target. Which is, again, not to scare people, like Drew was saying. We don't want to scare anybody. We do want you to be aware of what's possible. And once you're aware, you know, like fire, hey, you can aware of bad things that can happen with it. So you're safe around it. You have the good safety procedures.
So it has to involve some serious talent and or manpower and or money on their end to imitate these sites and build all these things. So obviously this is a lucrative thing for them, right? Doing this phishing. Like, they're not building a site that looks exactly like some other legitimate site and not making a significant amount of money off of this, right?
Yeah, I think you bring up 2 points there. One is the amount of money it takes for them to do the bad stuff. And 2 is the amount of money they make from it. So I think, like Mike just described at the beginning, the amount of money it takes to do this is almost nothing. Like, he was showing it in class, how to duplicate these websites in 3 minutes. So it doesn't take skill. It doesn't take resources. You know, anybody can go out and find tools online that can help you craft phishing emails and just blast them out to millions of email addresses. And that's what they do. You know, when a lot of people say nobody's going to target me, right? Why would they target me? I'm just some random person. Well, they're probably not targeting you. You're one of a billion emails that got sent. They just have to hope that one person clicks on it and falls for it to get a couple $1,000 from you. So, you know, on the other end, they are making money because, you know, even if it costs them a couple $100s to buy some software and, you know, send out those phishing emails, it just takes one person to fall for it that they can take a couple $1,000s from, and they just had a nice payday.
Yeah.
And also we think about the motivation of attackers. Countries like North Korea and Russia, you'll have a lot of state-sponsored attackers where they are given the resources of the government and they are told, hey, this is what you do. Especially in a place like North Korea. North Korea, a lot of scams come out of there. North Korea is a very poor country. Their resource don't have as many resources for the people as far as food. If you are a good cyber attacker and good hacker, you can maybe get benefits. You know, you please the government, you get better benefits. So they have a great motivation to get very, very good very, very quickly at their craft. So, you know, we see that it's not that person in the basement, in the parents' basement with the hoodie. These are professionals. These are people who do this as a living. They're very, very good at what they do.
Yeah, and that concept of state-sponsored, that may be a term that most people have never heard of before, but it really is governments. You know, I like to explain to my students, you know, the United States has branches of our military, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army. China has a branch that are hackers. That is what they do, and their number one charge is hack other countries. Like, legitimately, it is their military doing this. And the same with Russia, the same with other state-sponsored places. So yeah, it's a lot of people with a lot of money, and it's their job 24/7. We have this, not to throw lots of terms at people, but we have this term in the cyber industry called APT, the Advanced Persistent Threat. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about APTs, these governments that are persistent. Like, it's 24/7, they never stop. You know, you have the day shift, you have the afternoon shift, you have the night shift, and they are just hacking and hacking and hacking.
I can't imagine a world where you get up in the morning, you go get your morning coffee, you go to your office building, you sit down, and you try to extort money from people.
But that's the way it is. That's what these places are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, another level that these attackers have gone on, you know, we live in a subscription economy. I don't think there's anybody listening that doesn't have a subscription for something. And generally, we use the term in technology as a service, okay, as a service, something, software as a service, or whatever it is, because you're paying for it every month rather than maybe buying a product. Well, attackers have developed what's called ransomware as a service, which is actually really genius if you think about it. We'll talk about ransomware and what that does and what it can do to a company or a person. But generally, what it is the attackers will develop this software, and you, as a person, you know, you could hire them. You pay them a certain amount of money every month, and you use their malicious software, so that you don't even have to develop it yourself. You can just give them an email list and say, hey, I want to attack these people. And generally, you either pay them up front or a percentage of the money that's gained from the victims. But you don't even need to have those skills. And to introduce another term is that we use in technology and cybersecurity is script kiddies. Okay, maybe people that don't have great technological backgrounds, but they're able to go online, maybe copy some code, or hire somebody else as a service and carry out an attack. So you don't even need, the barriers have come down for what technological skills you need to carry out an attack.
So since you brought up the term ransomware, let's identify that. What exactly is the difference between a phishing email and a ransomware email, or do they cross over to some degree?
That's a good point. Mike, you were going to say something. You want to start?
Oh, sure. And, I'd like to make comparisons to the physical world, maybe something that you've experienced, and hopefully nobody has experienced this. But if you've ever had a boot on your car, maybe not your car, but you've seen a boot on somebody's car, the big yellow thing that says...
I have never had a boot on my car.
I am happy because it's got to be a terrifying thing. You can't go anywhere. You can't drive your car. So you can get in your car and you can turn your car on and you can listen to the radio, but you can't drive it because that boot is going to stop you. Now, how do you get the boot off of your car? Well, generally, it's not just because somebody felt like putting it on your car. You parked in the wrong spot. You have to pay the fine. Maybe you have unpaid parking tickets. You have to pay that fine, that ransom, in order to get your car to go again. So that's in the physical world. We think about in the digital world, we have files on our computer. Okay, and we like to access those files. They have information that we need and we'll use. What ransomware would be a digital boot on those files. The attacker would somehow gain access to your computer and make those files encrypted, which would make kind of scramble them. If you want to think about scrambling the code so you're not able to access those files unless you pay them money. Okay, if you pay them money, then they will purportedly descramble those files for you so you can access them again. So one of the things is, how badly do you want to access this file? Well, I really need it. I have to pay a couple $1,000s ransom to be able to access the files on my own computer.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's you brought up phishing at the same time, and that's an interesting point because a lot of people might think, well, how do I get ransomware? How can I prevent ransomware from getting on my computer? And phishing is one way you could get it. So, like when we talk about phishing emails, they could be used for various things. Like Mike had explained before, they could be used to just trick you into doing things, but maybe they also come with an attachment. And maybe you open that attachment, which again, if you listen to the first podcast, we said stop clicking on things.
Stop clicking on things.
That goes for attachments as well. Don't open attachments when you don't know where they came from. Because maybe that attachment is that malicious ransomware code that's going to get installed on your computer and scramble up all of your files. So that's a very common way that people get it. But it can also come from you visiting a malicious website too. So if you were to click on one of those links in a phishing email, go to a website, that website might automatically download something to your computer, and then bam, your files are all scrambled.
And those attachments could look completely innocuous. It could look like a Word document that is something else. It could look like an Excel spreadsheet, a PDF, any kind of document. And you might look at it and say, well, this document is fine. I opened it up and nothing happened. You wouldn't notice anything happening. It happens behind the scenes. In your computer, and then all of a sudden, maybe weeks or months or days down the road, those files become encrypted. And as a history, ransomware seems to be in the news recently. We hear about it maybe in the last couple of years. The first ransomware attack was actually back in 1989. It was done for anybody who really want to turn the clock back. Anybody who remembers the old floppy disks? All right, we had the.
You mean the save button?
The save button, exactly.
So you 3D printed a save button.
100%. Maybe a lot of people never had any access to those disks or used them. They were awesome. You'd have like 8 disks for a program. You have to keep switching them. But the first ransomware attack was in 1989. It was called the AIDS virus, and a fella took the 20,000 disks and mailed them out to people. Actually, physically. We talk about phishing emails, but these were physical mail. They were mailed out to people, and it was supposed to be about AIDS research. Now, rewind to that time, that was something a lot of people had an interest in. AIDS was up and coming. They wanted to learn about it, what was going on. So people put it in their computer. After their computer rebooted 90 times, it would say, guess what? You can't access your files anymore unless you mail a check for, I think it was like $249 to this P.O. box somewhere in South America. And then you would get a code, which you could access your files. So we hear about ransomware, we hear about cyber attacks, and we think, oh, this is the new thing. Well, it's been around, close to 35, 40 years.
So you had said, just using that example, mail a check and then we'll send you a code to release your information. But you're also putting your faith in a
criminal,
to that they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. How likely is it that when you pay this ransom, and again, we're hoping to avoid having that happen to you at all, but if something were to happen, how likely is it that the hacker will, or the scam artist, we'll use that term instead, will release your information?
So I don't know that any of us actually know a percentage of how likely it is, but I can tell you what we say in our field: never pay the ransom. So okay. It's because of that exactly. What most companies will do, and likewise what most individuals should do, is you should always have your stuff backed up, right? If something is important to you, you should have it in more than one place. So whether you subscribe to some cloud backup service or whether you copy your stuff to a USB stick and keep it somewhere else, if a file is important, you should have it in more than one place. That way, if something happens to the main place, you go to your backup and you don't have to pay that ransom.
And that's the number one thing in technology. Backup can save your life. And it could be ransomware. Your computer could get ransomware, or your computer could just break.
Without a hacker.
Right. Yeah. We talk about malicious attacks, but what if your computer the hard drive crashes? Have a backup of your data.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And you mentioned like cloud backups, things like that. I mean, or even having USB drives, things of that nature. Yes, there is a cost involved in that. There's a cost usually involved in having a cloud backup. There's a cost
involved. It's a subscription, right?
Right. It's a subscription, yeah. But, comparatively speaking, the cost of buying those USB drives, the cost of having that cloud backup is negligible compared to the cost of permanently losing family photos, permanently losing access to your data for business, permanently or potentially, and again, don't do this, Kevin's point, don't pay the hacker, or paying the hacker.
Yeah, I mean, on my personal machine at home, I have a little over 2 terabytes of files that I consider important. Photos that I've taken, stuff for school, all the classwork I've prepared, everything. And I subscribe to a cloud backup service. It only costs me, for the level that I subscribe to, like $11 a month. So in the grand scheme of things, I think $11 a month is well worth losing 2.4 terabytes of my personal data and never getting it back.
Because especially with photos, you can't replace those. You can't replace them.
You can't recreate those. Yeah.
You were using the example of trying to put this into the physical world. I mean, there are people that will, again, you're not trying to encourage this, but there are people that have been known to run back into a burning house to try to save family photos because they're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
What, for the cost of 2 cups of coffee.
I was just going to say 2 cups of Starbucks.
You're able to preserve all that and make sure you can have access to it no matter what happens. I think that's easily worth every penny that you're spending.
And by the way, not endorsing Starbucks. That was
but it's really good coffee.
I mean, it's hard to argue that.
Or maybe if you don't want a cloud service, maybe you say, well, I want to have it. I want to touch and I want to feel my backup. You can buy a couple terabyte hard drive on Amazon for $50 or $100. So, and then you just copy everything over maybe once a week and you have your backups, they're in your house.
Yeah.
So, which might bring up problems where, hey, if something happens to your house, well, then you lose your backups as well. That's why it's nice to have something off site. But, maybe you say, I want to have the old fashioned way. I want to have the, so it's not cost prohibitive at all.
So we've got a couple of, I'm going to do a very clunky segue here. So we've been talking about different technical options on how to, back up your data and avoid ransomware or recover from a ransomware scam, that sort of thing. But you had said about like tech support scams. So for people that don't always know what the cloud is, so we were talking a little bit again, prior to hitting the record button today about the fact that the cloud is not in the sky. The cloud is a physical piece of hardware somewhere.
It's not.
I think that people that are not potentially tech savvy might be susceptible to something like a tech support scam. And I wanted to kind of touch on what those scams involve and how they work.
Yeah, tech support scams would be where maybe something pops up on your computer and says, you have to contact us right away, call this number. Or maybe they call you, and maybe they call you and say, there's a problem with your computer. We've determined it. We're from Microsoft. Now, Going back to what we talked about in the last episode about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, something's wrong. I need to have it fixed. Microsoft is on the phone. Now, what I tell people, step back for a minute.
How convenient.
Exactly. If you've ever tried to call Microsoft support, you will be on hold for a long time, days, perhaps weeks. It's like the IRS. If you ever call the IRS, you don't get right through. The IRS does not call you ever. So whenever we see this, hey, you're not talking to Microsoft tech support. They're trying to get you to do something. They'll try to get you to go to a website, give them access to your computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably the number one thing that happens with those tech support scams is, they trick you into thinking they're real tech support, but what do? They get you to install something. Mm-hmm. And what is that thing? It's remote access. So you'll start seeing your mouse moving, right? They now have control of your computer, and now they can do whatever they want. Any website you're logged into, any password you have saved, any file that's on your computer, they have full access to your life at that point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, nobody's ever going to call you. Your bank is not going to call you and say, hey, we saw your computer was insecure. We want to make sure your money is safe. Can you install this? That's not going to happen.
Right. We partner with the American Bankers Association on a program called Banks Never Ask That. And it's a series of videos and things like that they put out there that say, your bank will never call you to ask whether or not you prefer a Sega Genesis or a vintage Nintendo system. Like it uses sort of outlandish ideas to illustrate the fact that your bank will never call you to ask that kind of stuff, just like we will never call to ask you your username, your password, your personally identifiable information. If you're a customer of a bank, that your bank has that information already. They will not call you to verify it or ask you to confirm it. Now, there's a difference there too, and I think it's important to touch on this because it applies to banks, but I think it applies to other industries as well. If you call us, we need to identify that you are who you say you are, right? Because we're trying to protect you. So if you call our call center, we may ask you certain things. We will never ask you for a password. We will never ask you for a username.
Nobody does that. Yeah.
That will, even in those situations, we will not ask those information, but we will ask, you to identify perhaps the last transaction total that happened on your account or something that you would have access to that we can just confirm that you are who you say you are when you call us. We will never call you and ask that information. It's never an incoming call that you would ever be asked that.
If you do get an incoming call from somebody, one of the best things you can do is say, could I call you back? Mm-hmm. Give me a number to call you back. Generally, they'll hang up on you at that point. But if they do give you a number, then you can check that number. Is that actually bank support? Or better, if you get a call that's purported to be from your bank, say, I'm going to call you back at the customer service number. Call the bank's actual customer service number. And then ask, say, hey, did somebody call me?
And that's a really good point because another type of scam that people may not know about, pretty much everybody nowadays has caller ID on their phone somehow.
Yeah.
Caller ID can be fake. It is extremely easy for attackers to put a fake number in the caller ID of the call that they're making you. Mm-hmm. So you may look at the caller ID and say, oh yeah, that is my bank's number. This is legitimate. Do not believe that because it can always be fake.
Yeah.
So always do what Mike said, ask them for a number to call back or pop your bank's website into Google, find their real number to call back.
Yeah.
You always want to take the initiative there because just assume everything's fake.
Yeah. On a previous episode, we've talked about spoofing. You can get a call where it pops up with somebody's name and phone number, and the attacker has spoofed it. They've actually put that information in there to make it look like they're calling from the bank, and it looks official. I've gotten text messages, maybe you've gotten them as well, that said, you have a package from the U.S. Postal Service. It's stuck in transit. We need you to verify some information. Mm-hmm. We need you to click on this link. And so trying to get you to do some sort of activity. If you look at the link, and I've opened them up in a secure environment, and they look legitimate. If you looked at that, you'd say, well, this looks like the U.S. Postal Service website.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we were talking about like text messages and stuff like that also brings up the fact that most of the time you're receiving text messages on your phone. You're not necessarily receiving those kinds of messages through your computer, right? So some people might think that, well, it's not my computer. I can still click on this because it's just my phone. Mm-hmm. Your phone is not a phone anymore. Your phone is a miniature computer that you carry around in your pocket that has an app on it that allows you to use it as a phone. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to make that identifying thing. We use that vernacular because it's just familiar because, oh, it's my phone. But it's really a miniature computer that can be accessed just like your other computers could be accessed, whether you're clicking on a link on that or a link on your PC.
Yeah, everything is a computer, and that just opened up Pandora's box in my head of things that I want to talk about. But if you ever hear the term smart something, I'm sure you've all, smart TV, smart refrigerator, smart toaster, those are computers. Mm-hmm. The exact same computer like you have your laptop or your desktop. They are full computers. They can be hacked. They can get viruses. They can steal your information. Mm-hmm. And you may think to yourself, what information does my television or my toaster have? Mm-hmm. Well, if they're smart, they're connected to your home Wi-Fi where your real computers are that have your real information.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, all this, and especially the phone, like your phone is a real computer. It has all the information that your laptop or your desktop does.
I've seen smart washing machines, smart toothbrushes, and I'm like, why do these devices need to be on the internet?
Yeah.
They don't.
And I mean, they come with great, they're sold to you like they're amazing. And, I saw like a smart oven. And the goal of the smart oven was there's a video camera inside and there's an app on your phone. So you can put something in to cook, go in the other room, watch TV. Your phone will notify you when the timer's up. You can look at the image of what's in your oven to see if it's done without having to get up and walk over. That seems amazing. I would love to be able to walk around my house and know that my food isn't burning.
Right.
But also, who's to say that a hacker can't break into that and set the temperature to 1,000,000 degrees and make your house catch on fire? So there are problems with everything. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But back to the phone, yes, be aware of not clicking links on your phone the same as you would on your computer.
Well, it's funny because we use the term dialing a phone. There's no dial, and it's not a phone. It really is a computer that happens to be able to make phone calls. But at the end of the day, how often are you actually talking to somebody on your phone? Probably not very much.
Yeah, I hate talking to people.
Right.
It's a digression, but we used to. There was a comedian that had a clip of this at one point, but they said about how when people used to get a knock at the front door, they would jump up to answer the door because they were so excited that someone had stopped by. And now if someone knocks on your door, you cringe and sort of hide behind your couch and assume that it's who would come to my house without telling me?
Nobody goes outside anymore.
And the same thing happens on, I've had people text me ahead of time and say, can I call you? Like, we never would have thought 20 years ago that we would have to have permission to call you and talk to you using my voice, that I would have to text you ahead of time and say, is it okay if I give you a call?
Oh, if I get a call from somebody, I just assume it's bad news. Because it's like, well, why is this person calling?
Let it go to voicemail.
Right.
Yeah. And if it is one of these hackers, it is bad news or scam artists. So exactly. I keep saying scam. I keep saying hackers.
Well, that's a great point. Maybe we can digress there a little bit. Hacker is not a bad thing. Kevin and I are hackers. The students that we have are aspiring hackers, and we're ethical hackers. In a lot of cases, criminals are doing hacking activities. But if you look back to the 60s where the hacker terminology came about, it was people using technology to get it to do something it wasn't supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And, it became a pejorative term but these are criminals. These are people that are conducting cybercrime, actually trying to harm us and harm society. So there's certainly good hackers out there, the ethical hackers that are working for the good.
So one of the other things that we touched on somewhat in the first episode on that we had released before was social engineering. But I think that all of these scams, to one degree or another, probably rely on the term social engineering. And I want to maybe talk about that a little bit in this episode, maybe dive a little deeper into what that means. The term social engineering, what exactly is that, and how does it apply to some of the things we've been talking about?
Sure. I think the best way to illustrate it is an example, an example that we have seen in students getting emails. Now, let's, think about a student's motivation for being in college. Well, it's to get knowledge, right? To learn. The ultimate goal is what? It's to get a job eventually after college, unless somehow they become independently wealthy by hitting the lottery in their college time. They want to get a job. So college students are seeking jobs. So if I'm an attacker, put my attacker hat on, I have a group of people that are very motivated to go get a job. So why don't I send them an email or maybe set up a website and tell them, I'm hiring. Send me your resume. Oh, your resume looked pretty good. Let me set you up for an interview. Maybe many interviews now are conducted via Zoom, not even in person. So I could interview somebody via a call, via online. And I could say, wow, you did well. I want to hire you. Okay. This person's thinking, this is great. I got a job. My parents are going to get off my back now. I am going to work. I'm going to become gainfully employed. And so what's the first thing you do whenever you get a job? You have to provide, you want to get paid. So you have to provide your bank account information. Okay. You provide your social security number. So as the fake employer, I say, well, here's the documents. Here's an I-9. Here's the documents I need you to fill out in order to hire you. So you say, oh, that's great. Okay. I want to get paid. Here's my information. And then you just provided all of your information to the attacker. You thought you had a job. That's social engineering, getting you to do something that is not in your own best interests. In a scenario where you think one thing is happening and the attacker is certainly going after something else, trying to get information from you. And you can see that, well, this is not a technical attack. They're not using code or anything like that. They're hacking something that we often refer to as the weakest link in security is the human, hacking the human. And, computers are silicone-based, right? We think carbon-based, that's us in the chair. A lot of vulnerabilities there.
Yeah.
So we are definitely susceptible, and all of us, we are not exempt. People in the cybersecurity industry have been socially engineered because, again, these are professionals. These are people who are very good. They do it for a living. They're good at what they do.
And that scam that we just talked about earlier, the tech support scams, that's a type of social engineering scam. That's exactly what it is. They're preying on your emotions, essentially. I like to always bring up, the fight, flight, or freeze, emotion of people. And, what are you going to do? Are you going to react? Are you going to think? They're trying to make you react. They're trying to do something like, Mike said, oh, I want a job. I got to fill out this paperwork right now. Or the tech support scam. I don't want my computer to be broken. I got to let them fix it.
Yeah.
Whatever the case might be, they're trying to get you to not think, to do something before you take the time to think.
And everybody's been in that situation. Everybody's been in a scenario where they did something, and then whenever they look back on it in a more calm state, they say, oh, I can't believe I did that. I can't, that's not me. I would have never done that. But sometimes your brain short circuits.
I think it's important to remind people too that there's no embarrassment involved here. If you find that you have been a victim of a social engineering ploy or some sort of scam, you don't ignore it. You don't hope that, I just won't tell anybody because, man, I'm embarrassed.
It's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away. You need to do something to try to resolve the situation as quickly as possible because a lot of damage can be done once your information is out there because, once it's out there, it can be shared. It can spread faster than you can possibly imagine as far as, being out there. And we tell our kids a lot of times, posting photos online and things like that. Like it's out there forever. You can put it out there. You can take it down. We see this with politicians. We see this with people all the time. They put stuff on Twitter, or X, whatever it is today.
Whatever, yeah.
And then, 5 minutes later, they take it down because it was something they didn't want, they didn't want. It doesn't matter. Somebody has screenshot it. Somebody has taken it and done something with it. And that's a long way around of saying just, if you find that yourself a victim of some of these things, don't feel bad about it. Just take action to try to resolve it as quickly as you can.
The internet never forgets.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're a crime victim. We're talking about cyber criminals. You're a victim of a crime. If you got mugged walking down the street, it wouldn't be your fault. It's the fault of the criminal. So yeah, exactly. I heard a story one time of a receptionist that clicked on a link and it ended up being a ransomware, and she got so flustered and upset, she turned off her computer and ran out of the building. Because she didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that comes into awareness and education, having people understand what's possible, what to do, how to be resilient. Hey, I had an incident. My computer doesn't work anymore. What do I do?
And I think if you don't mind, that's a really good time to bring up, what do you do?
It is.
Right, because we've been talking about these for the last episode, for this episode, what should you do if you fall victim to one of these things? And there's so many things. It really depends on what the problem is. So one of the easiest things to do, if you fell victim to a social engineering attack that made you log in somewhere, and you think you may have logged in somewhere that might have been bad, step number one is change all of your passwords.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, if you listen to our first episode, you know that you should not have the same password on every website. If you do have the same password on every website, you have a lot of work to do because you have a lot of passwords that you need to change. But you should immediately change your passwords because assume the bad guy got your password. Now you need to make sure that they can't get into your account anymore, so go change them. That is step one. Do that within 30 seconds of realizing you did something wrong. But, maybe you put in a credit card to a website that you think might be bad. Well, it may be time to call the bank and have them, some banks offer like monitoring services because canceling a credit card is pretty awful, right? It's a pain. So maybe they can monitor it for you. Maybe you can put a hold on it, or maybe you just want to cancel it and get a new number. But, step one is to realize, what do you think was compromised? Is it just my password? Is it my credit card? Is it my social security number? And that will inform you on, what do I need to do to protect those things?
Yeah, basic blocking and tackling. We see this, cybersecurity seems, wow, it's so confusing and hard. But like Kevin mentioned, that very basic, change your password, have a different password on every website. Yeah, is it hard? It's a little annoying. Hey, it's easy to have the same password everywhere, right? I think all of us, whenever we first started out on the internet, let's make it simple for ourselves. Let's keep functionality. But as we started to think, well, what if somebody gets that password? They have all of my passwords. You have a unique one on every application, every website. It just protects you. And that's a basic thing everyone can do. You don't need to have any technological skills or level of knowledge to just have a different password or passphrase, as we talked about in a previous episode. Don't just use a word. You can use a sentence. There is no rule that says your passphrase can't be the Steelers have won 6 Super Bowls. That's easy to remember, and it's really, really difficult, if not close to impossible, to crack.
Yeah. Kevin, you mentioned something about credit cards. And so let's touch a little bit about like online shopping scams and things like that. I think that especially around certain times of year, and I'll say like around the holidays in general, gift giving times, things like that, you'll start to notice that you're more willing sometimes to use a website that you're not as familiar with because you want that particular item as a gift for somebody or
a better
like
price.
Yes. Or a better price. That's a big deal. So, what do you do when you find that maybe you've visited a website that in April you never would have gone to, but because it's that time of year and you want that gift and you want that lower price, you've given your information, credit card information, things like that to somebody like that?
Yeah, you really got to be careful around the holidays because, they will attack you via all methods. We've already talked about phishing and text message, smishing. You're going to get lots of emails. Like Mike had given the example, your package is in transit, you need to release it. You're going to be seeing lots of those in email, in text message. They're going to try to get you to log into a fake page. So you got to be really careful about your messaging. And yeah, websites, it's really hard to tell people to do this because you want that best price, but only shop at legitimate stores. Don't go to Joe's Russian Toy Store.com, because you can get a toy for $10 cheaper. Like that's probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Only shop at reputable places because, you don't know what they are going to do with your data. We would like to think that when we type our credit card into Amazon or any other shopping site, that either they are not saving our credit card, they're just using it for the transaction and then getting rid of it, or if they do save it, it's encrypted somehow. So if a bad guy were to break in, they can't see the numbers. We would like to think that's the way it works. And maybe it does for the big guys, but not Joe's Russian Toy Store. They might be saving your credit card as just the real numbers. Yeah. That if they were to get hacked, everybody's credit card is now stolen.
One of the things from a banking perspective that I can tell you too is that if you ever encounter a store, a retailer of some sort that says, well, we don't accept credit cards, but we want you to wire us the money.
Oh, never
wire.
Do
not do that. Just don't do it. Like the thing your mom told you, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, right? I mean,
wiring is never an option.
Wiring is a red flag. If you hear the term, somebody wants you to wire money either to, or if they want to wire money to you and then have you wire it to someone else, that's another scam. And whenever you hear that, that is a red flag. I'll also mention this as far as buying things online with your credit card. We want convenience. We want to use our credit card and we want to get things. And There's services that will allow you to use a masked credit card number. Privacy.com is one. There's several out there, which whenever you buy something on a website, you don't provide your actual credit card number. Privacy.com gives you a one-time use credit card number that you can use, and you can authorize it for a certain dollar amount, so that even if somebody gets that credit card number, they don't have access to your actual credit card. They just have that one-time use one. So the scope of the damage would be much, much less. So privacy.com is one. There's several out there, not endorsing or saying, hey, go use this. It's just a resource that is available if you would like to explore that and say, well, why am I giving the same credit card number to every retailer? Can't I have a unique one? We talk about unique passwords. This is a way to have a unique credit card number.
That's very interesting. I had never actually heard of that.
I've actually used them. I bought something from a website that I was afraid. You know how like subscription services, if you forget to cancel in a certain number of days, they charge you again. I was afraid that might happen. So I got a temporary credit card number from privacy.com and set the limit for only that one purchase. So if it did renew, it would just get declined.
Yeah.
And that was just a way to save me that extra money.
And those Russian nesting dolls you got me for my birthday, Kevin.
Exactly.
From that website, yes.
I mean, that's a great website. It's a great website.
We talk about this from a banking perspective, and having things like online banking and having certain apps on your phone too is also helpful, because especially when it comes to shopping scams, things where you're spending money, because if you're waiting for a monthly statement to be printed out and mailed to you, sometimes, you can be 28 days behind in even recognizing that something has happened, that an erroneous charge has happened on your account, things like that. So having online banking, being able to look at your statement on a daily basis, your account information on a daily basis is important. A lot of banks, a lot of credit cards, AmeriServ is one of them, but many banks, many credit card companies have the ability to turn off your debit card, turn off your credit card if you think that it's been compromised.
Without canceling
it. Yeah, it's literally an app on your phone. You go in, you log in, you toggle a little switch, and the card can't be used until you turn it back on, or until you have a chance to contact your bank and have them cancel it and reissue you a new one. I can speak from personal experience. A number of years ago, I woke up in the morning and there were 3 notifications on my phone that had happened at 3:00 in the morning, where they had been doing test transactions. One was for $1, one was for $5, one was for something else. And I know that I had not done them. I very quickly got on my phone. It was 6:00 in the morning. I was able to turn off my card so that I knew that no further transactions could come through until the bank opened, and I was able to then resolve it. Because, they'll do that stuff in the middle of the night, knowing that you can't call if you have a small community bank, you can't call them at 3:30 in the morning and have them turn off your card.
And you're sleeping.
You're sleeping. You don't know that it's happening, right? So being able to have some limited control over the way that your bank account, your credit card, your debit card are being used is very helpful. And most of those services are normally free from your bank.
And I can give two examples of things that I do in that same vein. On my credit card, they have the ability to set up alerts. So any charge above a certain amount, I get an email to let me know that this happened. And my limit is $200, which may seem crazy because, I'm a technology person. A lot of stuff I buy is over $200. But for me, that was a good limit that, if a lot of charges come in over $200, I want to know about it, because that's a lot of money if they start adding up. Yeah. So, and what's the pain for me? It's not a pain. It's just a single email. So even if it's a legitimate transaction, I just delete a single email. But it keeps me on top of big charges that may come through. So setting up alerts is really good. And the other thing that I always tell people, I do this myself. If you have an iPhone, use Apple Pay. That is the number one thing you can do to protect your credit card from getting stolen. You might think, oh, it's on my phone. My phone isn't secure. Yes, that, or Google Pay, whatever they call it on an Android phone. Using those services for credit card payments, like to be able to tap your phone to pay at different retail outlets. Even websites have this integrated now, that you can use Apple Pay and Google Pay through a website, so you don't have to provide your credit card.
Right.
The way that this protects you is now you only have to trust Apple or Google, like one company, with your credit card. Every time you use it to buy something somewhere, they are generating those random codes like Mike had talked about. So it's not your real credit card number getting transmitted to Starbucks when you buy a coffee. It's some random credit card number that for that one-time transaction is linked back to Apple. They link it back to your account, so your account can be debited the money or, whatever. So yeah, using those services is really, really nice. And it is not insecure. It is one of the best things you can do to prevent your credit card from getting stolen.
And having that visibility into what's happening on your cards. Like, yeah, like Drew and Andrew mentioned, or Kevin mentioned.
One of us mentioned it.
Him over there. Having the visibility as to what's happening on your card. If you have these alerts set up, then you can be aware. You're not waiting for the statement to come in the mail. That was the old way, right? You got your statement and 27 days ago I had fraud. Now, what do I do now? It's almost a month later. Now you can know real time. So there's a lot of scams, a lot of things. Technology has accelerated the attacker's capabilities, but it's also accelerated what defenders, what us as people who want to protect ourselves can do.
Yeah. So basically, just to kind of tie this up a little bit, because again, there are other scams out there that we could talk about. But I think that what we've touched on are probably the ones that are the most frequent, possibly, especially because they sometimes, to use your Russian nesting dolls analogy, they sort of work with each other. Phishing will work with ransomware. Phishing can be an end in and of itself. It can also be a step toward another type of scam and sort of just, adding them together. What really should people be doing? I mean, I know we said in the last episode, don't click on links. I think that bears repeating. I mean, if you're receiving emails and links and things like that, text message links, things like that, don't click on the link. I want to leave it there and don't click on links, but especially if you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I think one of the words that Mike had used earlier is skepticism. Having a good level of skepticism is the number one way that you don't fall victim to these things. There are lots of different scams that will try to trick you and make you feel emotions in lots of different ways. Just take a second and think about it. And, always, one of the scams we had on our list that we didn't touch on, but it could happen, like an IRS scam. You think you owe the government money.
Yeah.
That's one that might get, a real big emotional response from people. Just take a second, maybe call the IRS yourself and verify, hey, do I really owe $10,000? Is this real? Like, be skeptical. Always check for yourself. Don't trust whatever you got that made you feel that emotion.
Right. And to piggyback on that, there's other scams, and we could probably have an entire several episodes on all the scams. There's one that will come in. The subject line will be a password that you've used before. So whenever you get this email, how scared are you? Hey, that's my password in the subject. They must know something. Everything else that follows must be correct. They know my password. In reality, the attackers look at data breaches that are freely available online.
Yeah.
And they email all the people because we have an email address, we have a password. Hey, I know your password. You're going to assume everything else is correct. And you have that fear reaction. I better send money to these people. They know my password. But, take that step back. Talk to somebody trusted in real life. Not over the internet. Call somebody that and say, hey, here's the scenario. Walk me through. Help me deal with this. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, you are the potential victim or the victim of a crime.
When you're receiving these communications, I think too, scammers are getting much better at making things look legitimate. But going back to that whole idea of taking a second, taking a beat, not just reacting instantly. Does the email or the text message from the IRS is IRS misspelled? Is it coming from irs.org or .com instead of .gov? Does the logo of the company that's in the email, does it look wrong? Does it look too tall or too short or the wrong color? Or there are things you can look at that, that might be a visual tip off to you that maybe something's not quite right with this, even though you might do business with Microsoft. Is it coming from a website like microsoft.t.com or something weird like that? Just that extra couple of seconds can save you so much time, because realizing it's a scam and clicking delete is probably the easiest thing you can do to avoid these problems.
It's your best line of protection right there.
Yeah. So are there any other key issues that we haven't really touched on as far as prevention that you wanted to touch on before we wrap things up today?
I mean, from a scam perspective, I don't think so. I think it can all be distilled to that, take a second, just think it through.
And I would just say be vigilant. Just remember, an attacker only needs to be right one time. As a defender, you need to be right all of the time.
Yeah. That sounds daunting.
It's a big assignment, but the tools that we talk about on both this show and future shows, that's why you want to stay tuned. These are the things we're going to give you the tools to help defend yourself, protect your family.
I heard you say future shows, and that means that you guys are coming back, because you guys, these are great conversations, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit down with us and talk through these things, because I think people can be very overwhelmed by this topic.
Yeah, I mean, we hope to be back. That was kind of Mike's way of kind of forcing you to bring us back. We're just going to say that every episode, and then we'll have to come back.
Fair enough. All right. Well, some of the information that we shared here today, we will share in the description, some of the different websites and different materials, resources that you can use to try to help protect yourself, to be able to hopefully avoid becoming an identity theft victim or a scam victim. And some of the things that you just might want to read more about, we will put in the description of the show below. And definitely subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Not only will it make sure that you get notified when new episodes drop, but it helps promote the show to other people. And we thank you very much for listening. Thank you, gentlemen, for showing up once again today. And yeah, you're coming back. So I just want to let you know that. So,
all right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks. This podcast focuses on having valuable conversations on various topics related to banking and financial health. The podcast is grounded in having open conversations with professionals and experts, with the goal of helping to take some of the mystery out of financial and related topics, as learning about financial products and services can help you make more informed financial decisions. Please keep in mind that the information contained within this podcast and any resources available for download from our website or other resources relating to bank chats is not intended and should not be understood or interpreted to be financial advice. The host, guests, and production staff of Bank Chats expressly recommend that you seek advice from a trusted financial professional before making financial decisions. The host of Bank Chats is not an attorney, accountant, or financial advisor, and the program is simply intended as one source of information. The podcast is not a substitute for a financial professional who is aware of the facts and circumstances of your individual situation. Phishing scams are one of the most common types of cybercrime. Statistics show that in 2022, there were more than 300,000 phishing victims, with a total loss of more than $52 million in the US alone. Scammers don't need to hack your computer if they can convince you to simply give them the information they need. The good news is that you have an excellent chance of avoiding these scams if you simply know what to look for. Be aware. Think before you click. Don't make purely emotional decisions. We want to thank Kevin Slonka and Mike Zambotti from St. Francis University for joining us again on the podcast today. If you're interested in learning more, please visit AmeriServ.com/bankchats or AmeriServ.com/fraud for content on how you can help defend yourself against cyber criminals. I also want to thank Jeff McTavish for his excellent work in editing and producing the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, as it really helps us to reach a larger audience. For now, I'm Drew Thomas. So long.